Okay, so now we're back. We're going to finish that project 2. We're going to show you the second half of what we started before on the part 1 video. So welcome to our quarantine session sheet metal. That's what we're calling it here. We're in our coronavirus quarantine, so we're doing sheet metal videos to accompany the classes. So what we got here is, and you can zoom in on here, these I can erase them. These are number 4 rivets right here, so are these, and these are number 3. So what we're going to do eventually is they're all going to be number 5s. These are going to be flush rivets. So here we have number 4s. We're going to drill these number 4s out on both sides. Then we're going to size those holes and then put number 5s. These number 3s, we're going to size those up to number 4s, then drill them out and eventually get them to number 5s. These pulled rivets here, these blind rivets, we're just going to leave. So, kind of like we talked about before, the technique for drilling out these rivets, I took my counter punch here, I got a couple of them here. I took my punch and I just kind of accentuated that hole in the AD rivets. These are number 4s, so I'm going to drill them out first with a number 40 bit and then a number 30 bit, and they should come out perfect, and I hopefully won't damage the metal. Now we're going to do that with the pneumatic drill. This particular drill, I don't know when the last time it was used, so I'm just going to oil it. Just good safety. Is this on camera here? Good safety thing. Just going to put like 2 or 3 drops in there. It's just good for our tools to keep our tools maintained. The other thing I'm going to do here, since I have it, I'm going to take my number 40 bit. Got my number 40 bit here, and I'm going to tighten that down. Now I put oil in there, so just kind of work it a little bit, kind of get that oil kind of through the whole system. So I have a couple of these that I started. I punched them. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my drill bit to get right in that hole. And I went straight through that rivet. Now, keep in mind, this is why we do this. This is a number 4 rivet. This is a number 30, a number 40 bit. So I haven't even touched the metal around it. This one, again. That one I got a little off center, so I'm gonna bring it back into the center. Okay, now those are the protruding head rivets. So now, same thing on these flush rivets. Now with these flush rivets, I'm gonna do these here. Now these are already number 3s. So these I got to be a little bit more careful with. What I'm going to do, hopefully I'll get a. Okay, we'll get a punch later here. So I'm going to be really careful to get the center. And I got a little bit off center there. But the rivet is basically out. So there, I kind of punched the head of the rivet out. I didn't hit the existing material at all, so that's good. This one, same thing. Here, I got my drill bit right in where I punched it there. So now those 2 rivets are drilled out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go the rest of the way and drill out those number 3 3 rivets there. So now what I'm going to show you is always unplug your. Can you get this for me, Johnny? I need you to get this on the floor. You have to go the other way. You can't go through there. You cannot go through there. Right down here. No, that thing.
Thank you.
And then hold that
dab on
hose.
the haters.
And then hold that hose.
You guys know what to do. Dab on the haters.
John, go over there.
Peace.
Okay, so now we got a number 30 bit in there. And remember these first ones we just did do a number 40 bit. So now we have a nice pilot hole. So now I got my number 30 bit. And I'll easily just pop the heads of those number 4 bits. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and pull out all these number 4 rivets, and then I'll show you what that looks like after I'm done with that. Okay, so I drilled most of these out. I wanted to show a couple things here. Here's one where I didn't do this one yet. You can see the heads. Guys that do a lot of sheet metal keep all their heads on there. Like I said before, it's kind of a badge of honor thing. If you got a bunch of heads on there, it means that you're getting them right in the center. Sometimes, even if you do it perfect, the rivet head will stay in there. So you take a pin like this and just kind of put it through there, and that'll get rid of that rivet. So you can see I got that whole side drilled out. I didn't enlarge any of those holes. This one, all these flush rivets, I got those drilled out. This one, I'll do a couple of these here. If you get them just right, the head should just break off like that. Now I got too many rivets on heads on here. So one thing you can do, like I said, guys like to keep them on there. I actually don't. I like to pull them off. So sometimes you got to use pliers, and I'm reversing my drill. So that's how I get those off there. And these should all come pretty easy. I'll see if I can get one to stick so we can use the. It's much easier to do these when you do them with a 40 bit first. When you do them with a 40 bit first, it makes your life so much easier when you do them with a 40 bit first. There, I got those all to pop off. I didn't have to use a pin, but if you did have to use a pin, just like I showed you before, I got my punch in here, stick it in there, just kind of work it around. You can see a couple of these have the shop head still stuck into there. It's the same thing. I'm going to take my pin punch, kind of what's in there? Pretty good. That one I might have to drill out of there actually. That one I might have to take just a tiny bit of there. So now you can see I got all these pieces. I got them drilled out. Never fear, remember we marked them before, so these are all marked. So we know exactly where they go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drill all these out to a number 5 and then deburr them. Same with these. These I'm going to drill out to a for a number 4 rivet. Okay, So, like I said, I went ahead and I drilled all these, the two on the side, to number 5. Deburred them, put clecos in, deburred these flush rivets up here to number 4, deburred them, and then now I'm just finishing up my very last squeezing of the dimple in there. So I got all these dimples squeezed. So now, remember I put marks on here, so I have marks right there and marks right there, so I know how this goes. And these, like I said, these were all deburred, and now I dimpled them. So now I can go ahead and cleco these together. Now I got those all deburred, I got them all clecoed, so now I'm ready to use the rivet gun, and I'm going to put number 5 protruding head rivets on the side here. I'm going to put number 4 flush rivets here. And then when I'm ready to do that, I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so as we talked about, I went ahead and I drilled all these with a number 21, all these on the side. They're all deburred and clecoed together. These are all drilled to a number 4, deburred, and then dimpled. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is rivet these together. So, the easiest way to do it is to hold it in the vise. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but one way that works kind of simple is to use the vise to hold the work. So, I already got some rivets we need here. So these are flush. These are flush. Flush rivets. You can see they sit in there nice and flush where it's dimpled. I also come around to the back. We have our little gauge, so we know how long they should be. These are number 4 rivets, so that works out good with the gauge there. So, like all tools, I'm not exactly sure when the last time this rivet gun was used. So we're just going to put a couple 2, 3, 4 drops in there. Now, one thing that I've talked about before with a rivet gun, we never just pull the trigger when it's in the air. We always have to brace it up against something. And we want to test it. This might be a little strong, but we'll see what happens here. Alright, I'm going to flip this around because I'm right-handed. Flip this around, and then I'll come back to rivet. Okay, so now I have, put it on me. Now I have the rivet put in here. We got the right length. Happens to be a 4 by 4. So I have a flush rivet, so I got a flush rivet set on both sides. And I'm going to get my rivet gun on there. I'm pushing with a little bit of pressure. Now I got the bucking bar and I'm pushing back. And I'm going to check it with my gauge here. This is a gauge for a 4 rivet, so that's a good one. So now, I like to, sometimes it's a pain, I like to have a cleco on either side of where I'm riveting. Pick that up for me. pull these clecos. And one more of these flush rivets here. There we go. So there's the flush rivets. And then when we come back, I'll show you what those look like, and then we'll get ready to do those 5 rivets. Okay, so now if we zoom in over here, I'll take the camera real quick. You can see here I got these flush rivets in. Sometimes those flush rivet sets tend to mar the surface. That's why if it's an airplane that you're worried about, you know, if it's going to be a polished aluminum airplane, you want to put tape or use the rubber edge on those flush rivets. So what we're going to do here is start to drive these 5 rivets. I've kind of set up my thing here. Now sometimes you'll notice, especially with 5 rivets, even though I've deburred these, sometimes the 5 rivets just don't fit in there perfect. So one thing you can do is take your pneumatic drill just by hand and spin it through there, and that kind of gets rid of some burrs. And now we'll notice that fits in there. Same thing, if you look on the back here, we have about 1.5, maybe slightly under, but about 1.5 diameter showing through. I'm gonna put my rivet set on there, pushing with about 10 pounds of pressure. Now I got my bucking bar, and nice squeeze. So same thing here. Again, sometimes the rivets just aren't going to fit just perfect, especially on 5 rivets, so just run that through there to deburr it. These rivets are also cut, so sometimes when you cut rivets, there's little burrs on the rivets themselves. And sometimes when the rivet doesn't quite go in there, you can hold the bucking bar right next to the rivet and just barely tap it on the front side. And then drive it home. So I have my little gauge here, so I can check these. That one I probably drove a little bit too much, but they're pretty good. So I'll go ahead and I'll drive these number 5 rivets, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so now you can see I got all these number 5 rivets done. These are number 4 flush rivets. Those are all in there. So now the last thing I have to do with the rivets anyway is go through and drill these number 4 rivets out. So you can keep on doing it. So again, these are number 4. I'm going to start with a number 40 bit. So these are AD rivets. So they got a nice dimple for me. So I got my drill bit right in that dimple. You can go. And put my glasses on. Right in the dimple there. So again, that's a number 4 rivet, and this is a 40 bit. So I'm just kind of starting my pilot, make my life easier. So I'm gonna drill these out with this 40, and then I'll show you how I do it with the 30 bit. 40, I have 40s drilled through all these. Now I put a 30 bit in here, so I'm just going to show you how to bust out these heads. Sometimes the heads will bust out just like that. And one last one to go. So there, so that last one did what I wanted to do. Didn't completely bust out, so again I'm going to take my pin punch and just kind of rotate it around there, and you can hear it bust out. All these other ones, these shop heads, I can punch them out with my punch there. And I got one more right here, and I'll just bust that one out. And then there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill these to a number 21, and I'm going to deburr them and then dimple them. Where is it? Okay, so we went ahead and we riveted all these. I went ahead and I pulled all these rivets out. We drilled them up to a size 21, deburred them, and then dimpled them. So now I got, I cut some flush rivets here. So now we're going to rivet these flush rivets. Like that. That one, not a great job there, but then a couple more here. We're going to rivet these. Then we'll get ready to show you the next part. Okay, so now that we're done, we have all flush rivets here, number 5 flush rivets here, 5s on the side, and then our blind rivets here. The next part of the project is basically we're going to take this, this is an eighth of an inch aluminum bar stock, and we're going to countersink it and just attach it to the middle of our piece right here. So I have a line drawn on here where we're going to eventually put our rivets. We're just going to use 2 rivets to put it on there. The first thing we have to do is we know we're going to use number 3 rivets. John, go with Tony and see if you can get some flush number 3 rivets. I don't really care the length. Just any number 3 rivet that's a flush. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a test piece, the same thickness of what we're going to attach here to set our countersink. So this is a countersink that goes on a drill. You can adjust it to the size of the rivet. This is a number, this is a 3/32 pilot here, and a countersink right there. So what we're going to do, and I just taped this on here so it was easier for me to hold it. I'm going to put a countersink into this. I pre-drilled a number 40 hole there, a 3/32 hole. And I am going to just countersink this, and it's got a stopper. So it'll stop it at a certain point. And then we have a rivet here. Now I can tell by looking at it that I adjusted, so we can see here that that's way too deep for that rivet, right? So that's way too deep. So what I'm going to have to do is take my countersinker, and I'm going to have to adjust it. So how I'm going to adjust it is I pull this part back, and that allows me to turn this. Technically, every one of those little teeth should be 1/1000th of an inch. So we're going to go about like that and see where we end up. So now when I drill it, it should only do that. So now we're going to use, that's why I drilled 2 holes here. So now we have another hole there. Now we're going to set our rivet in there. And we can see that, boy, I got it just perfect, kind of by guessing. I've done this a few times, I guess, but now we got the perfect countersink for number 3 rivet. So now I know, that I have my countersink set correctly for a number 3 rivet, and that's with this test piece. That's why I just a little test piece. So now we're going to have to go in here and determine where we're going to put our rivets. Now, I drew this line. This is a 1-inch wide piece of bar stock. So I have a line drawn there halfway. So I got about a half of an inch. I got a half of an inch edge distance, which is going to be fine for any rivet that we put in there. So if I set this to a 1/2 inch, we can measure here. Because if we do the math, a 1/2 inch would be enough edge distance for, because we're going to eventually size this up. We're going to eventually size it up to a 4 rivet. So a 1/2 inch would be plenty of edge distance. So we're going to put a rivet right there. And a rivet right there. So that is where, try to keep the camera still. That is eventually where our rivets are going to go. So we're going to start with 3 rivets. So what we do, I have a number 40 bit in my drill here. We're going to drill the pilot first. There's one side. And there's the other side. So now we have these set up, and what I'm going to do here, according to the projects, now we have those. So now we're just going to match drill. Now we're just going to match drill this into the middle. It doesn't have to be exactly in the middle, but just kind of close to the middle. Can I have a Cleco pliers and a silver Cleco, please? Well, there's the Cleco pliers right there, so I just need a silver Cleco. So now we have our piece Clecoed in there. So now what I'm going to do is just match drill this other one. Can I get another Cleco, John?
Need any more?
Okay, good. So now we know we got 2 good holes there. So I'm going to take these out, and what I can do here, remember, always mark stuff when you build it, and then before you take it apart, always mark stuff so you know how it goes back together. And we'll just set this aside. So now we have our holes there. And now it's got a pilot. See, our countersinker has a pilot. So we let the pilot go in the hole. And countersink the one. And countersink the other. And we do have our rivet here. So we can double check them. We know they should be okay because we already did them. That one's good. And that one's good. So our countersinks are good. So now I'll go ahead and deburr these holes, deburr the back side of this. and then I'll show how we can rivet those together. So I went ahead and we countersunk this. I cleat-coated in and deburred everything, and I set a rivet in here, and I guessed a 3.5 would be the right size. So I threw a 3.5 in there, and I can use my gauge and I can see 3.5 is probably the right one. So now that we have that in there, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and stick my 2x4s in here. Again, the 2x4s are just to you know, hold my work and not damage it. So I got the right size rivet. I got about a diameter and a half sticking out the back. We're gonna do the same thing we did before, where we have our flush rivet set on our rivet gun, and I'm probably gonna need to turn this down. This is gonna go real easy compared to those 5 rivets that we were doing before. There. So one flush rivet in. One flush rivet in. I'll pull out that cleco. And I got a little burr there or something. So I'm gonna just stick my drill in there and just run it through by hand. No need to power it in there. Okay, and there's my flush rivet. So now we can see here 2 flush rivets countersunk, so they're flush. The shop heads look good. So now what I'm going to do, I need a board.
Which one?
The other one. So just like everything else. So now I have those 3. I have those 3 rivets in there. I'm going to drill them out. So get my drill bit right on that recessed dimple, because this was an AD rivet. That rivet head just popped off of there. Rivet heads are off of there, so that one just popped out. This one, I can, that one I'm gonna have to maybe just drill a tiny bit more. And our rivet head is there. So we can see we didn't enlarge any of those holes. This one I'm gonna have to drill out just a tiny bit more. There. Now those rivets are out of there. Those are still 3/32 holes. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna enlarge these holes to number 30 holes. I'll do those to number 30 holes, and then I'll set up the countersink for number 30 countersink. So went ahead, and this is a number 30 hole. I deburred it. I took our piece here and I drilled those out to 30. Just quick deburr the back here. So that way, again, when you're deburring, you don't need to go crazy and countersink it just a couple times around just to take away the burrs. Now we're going to need to put a number 30 countersink tool on here. So here's a bit for a number 30. And so we'll just take this off. Watch your breathing. Okay, so now here's a number 30 or a 1/8 countersinker. Okay, so now we have to check the height. So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to kind of making a logical guess here. Okay, so I'm going to test it on this piece. Oops. Didn't drill these out. So these have to be drilled out. Okay, so now I'm just gonna need to go a little bit more. So now I'm going to try to countersink that, and okay, so I used the countersinker and I tested this piece, so now we know how much to countersink this. We have number 30 holes drilled in here. And I'm doing it over a hole. I'm doing it over that hole in the 2x4 so that it fits in there better. Then I'll just test it, put these rivets in there. That one's good. And that one's good. So now we have our piece here. Again, we're going to line up our witness mark. And Cleco pliers. Cleco pliers. And I need a gold Cleco, Johnny. Other way. Or a bronze Cleco. So there's our bronze Cleco. And then pick those up from it. Okay. So now I got my flush head here on the head of the rivet. Put about 10 pounds of pressure. I got about a diameter and a half sticking out the backside. Do that one. And take out the cleco. And here's my other rivet. Same thing, I'm gonna have to just run this through a couple times by hand. Just to get a little burr out of there or something. So there, now we have two number 4 rivets in there, countersunk. So the next stage, and I'll do it off camera, I'm gonna drill out these rivets, and then where this spot is, we're gonna put a surface patch and then a flush patch. Okay, so what I did, since you saw this last, I just drilled out those 2 rivets on our piece. So now we're gonna pretend that that's damage. We're gonna pretend that's damage to this airplane. So we're gonna have to fix that damage, and we're gonna do, at first, we're gonna do what's called a surface patch. So what I'm gonna do is we're just gonna pretend this is damage. So I'm drilling a hole here for the purpose of fixing our damage here. So I'm gonna put in this step drill bit. I should have had a different drill ready. So we got this, I'm gonna do it here off to the side. We got this step drill bit, so I'm just gonna kind of enlarge, make my job a little bit easier. So if we had damage here, we'd have to okay, so we got a big enough hole there. So now, John, I need this black thing right now. I need it right now. That black thing. I'm going to use this thing called a nibbler. Now this nibbler, what I'm going to do is use it to get in here. Hopefully I made a big enough hole. And just kind of nibble, like the name implies. At my hole here. So I'm just kind of, so eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to nibble away, and then I'm going to use a file, and I'm going to use a sandpaper, and I'm going to have a perfectly round hole right there, and then, you know, deburr it, and it's going to be all sanded, and it's going to look all nice. So I'm just going to use this nibbler, and that's all. I'm going to get the bulk of it with this nibbler, and then I'm going to smooth it out. The next thing is we're going to put a surface patch on here. So we had damage to that. Now we need to make a nice neat hole. Then we're going to put a surface patch. So this is 32 thousandths aluminum, so I have another piece of the same kind of aluminum, 32 thousandths. I'm going to cut it out to this size circle, and then it's going to get riveted on. And that's going to be a surface patch. Now what I had to do, figuring out what size my patch had to be, I had to know that eventually I'm going to end up putting number 4 rivets in here, so a number 30 bit. So I had to calculate my edge distance. So my surface patch is big enough that when I put it on there, my edge distance, that's why I drew it on here, my edge distance from this edge of the hole, because this will be a hole, this area will all be cut out. My edge distance from there to the edge of my patch here will be sufficient to put a row going all the way around of number 4 rivets. That'll give me a sufficient edge distance. So I had to do my calculations to make sure to make this big enough so I could get a row of rivets in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out, deburr it, and then cut this out and deburr it, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so as you can see, what I've done here is I went ahead and I used the nibbler, kind of nibbled away, kind of used some sandpaper and file, and got that nice and smooth. That's all deburred, and that's a nice clean hole there. And I went ahead and I made our surface patch. So this is going to be our patch. Again, always consult the manufacturer's service manual. If there is no service manual that covers a repair like this, then the AC4313 will provide your guidelines for doing any repairs. But this was a piece of 32, so I made my patch out of the same material. So now, what I did is I knew that I wanted to put number 4 rivets in here eventually. I might start out with just putting number 3s in there, but I knew I'd put number 4s in there. So I figured out what my minimum edge distance was, and I increased it just a little bit. So what I have here is I measured about a little less than 3/8 of an inch. So I got a 3/8 of an inch line there where my row of rivets will go. Now, based on where this patch is gonna go, that'll provide me sufficient edge distance from this edge and from this edge. So that's always one thing you gotta consider when you're doing a patch, is you always have 2 edges to worry about, because I'm gonna be drilling holes through here and I'm gonna have to have the correct edge distance from that edge, but I'm also gonna need the correct edge distance from that edge. So that's what I have here. I have just a little less than 3/8 of an inch, which buys me enough edge distance for 4 rivets. Again, I might start out with just putting 3 rivets in here, but when you watch the whole video, you'll understand why I'm doing the planning as it is. So now here's my patch. It's gonna go right here. What I'm gonna do, like everything, I'm gonna put, I'll do it when I need to draw where my rivets are gonna go. So I do have a center point there. And what I'm gonna do is just draw one line. And I extended my line right there so that I have a witness mark so I know where this is gonna go eventually. Then, using my center mark again, so now I can kind of do away with that mark, because now I know where it's going to go right here. So now I'm going to draw a line like this. And a line like that. So now I have my spots. There's where my mark goes. Now I have my spots where I'm going to drill for a rivet there, 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 there. And that obviously is going to give me plenty of edge distance. I'm going to eventually use number 4 rivets. So my edge distance is going to be good, and my rivet pitch will be good. I could probably draw a whole other set of lines in there and double the amount of rivets and still probably be okay on pitch, but for now we're just gonna go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rivets. 8 rivets to hold this surface patch in. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is have I'm going to put a number 40 bit in here. Down, I'm going to need a cleat. I'm going to need a silver cleco, probably 3 of them. Just go grab a silver cleco. So I put a number 40 bit in here, and I'm going to drill these out. That's only one. I'm going to need 3 eventually.
Oh yeah, sure.
So John, my assistant, is obviously grabbing me Clecos. So I'm gonna put this patch. The first one's kind of the fun one. So I'm gonna put this patch right where it's gonna go. I have a number 40 bit in here. Okay, so now I'm holding my patch. I got my first spot for my Cleco, where my hole is going to go. And I'm just match drilling. I'm match drilling through my patch and into my, this would be the surface of the airplane. So you can see here, my hole, if I have a dial caliper, it's going to be equal distance. It's going to be equal distance, or roughly, from that edge, but also to the edge of my patch. So, I'm going to throw a Cleco in there just to hold it. So that'll help hold it. That's not a very good Cleco. I'm gonna eventually need another Cleco, John, whenever we get there. So there. So now there's my patch. Now I'm gonna match drill more of these holes. So I match drilled that one. Put a Cleco in there. Kind of my rule of thumb is drill a hole, put a Cleco in. I'm gonna need 2 more Clecos, John, and this one's broken.
Okay, I'm gonna
Believe it or not. Yeah, put it back in there. But I'm gonna need 2 more. Okay. So, drill a hole, put a Cleco. That's kind of the general rule of thumb. Drill a hole, put a Cleco. Now these next ones I won't have to put a Cleco because I already got 4. So now I have my patch. I have my patch on there. I have holes drilled, and I match drill them so the holes go all the way. So now what I'm going to do is I'll take out these Clecos, take it apart. I have my mark so I know which way it goes, and then I'll make my mark a little bit more obvious here. Make my mark right there so I know which way it goes, and I'm going to deburr all those holes, and then I'll show you what we do next. Okay, so like I said, I went and I deburred all these. I got like one last hole here to deburr. Again, with this deburr, remember, I'm not countersinking it, I'm just taking away a little bit of the burr. So now we made our marks, so we know exactly how this goes back together. So what we're going to do here is take our Cleco, put this guy together here. Maybe put a Cleco right there, and maybe one right there. So now we got 3 Clecos in there holding this together. So now we got to pick, again, this is a surface patch. So we're gonna take, I'm gonna guess here, a 3-3 rivet. So here's a 3-3. I drop it in there, and that looks like it's about a little less than a diameter and a half. So it's probably like 1.3 diameters, 1.4 diameters, which is gonna be good enough for what we're doing. Remember, we just want to be between 1.3 and, you know, like 1.6 diameters. 1.5 is ideal, and we're just a little less than 1.5. That was a 3-3. A 3-4, I put a 3-4 in here. I don't know if it shows up, but that's a 3-4, and that's probably over 2 diameters. So 3-4 is way too long. A 3-3 is just on the shorter edge. I wouldn't want it to be any shorter than what it is, but a 3-3 looks okay. That's a little bit less than a diameter and a half, so that's what we're gonna go with. So 3-3 looks like that's gonna be the right rivet for us. So I went ahead here, and I have we're using number 3 rivets. I drilled number 40 holes in there. Let me stay over there. Pick that up. Pick that up. So I'm just getting my blocks in here. Sometimes it's nice to have 3 hands when doing this, but we make do with what we got. So there, I got my piece supported there. And I'm going to put a rivet in here. Now again, remember, we don't ever just fire the trigger into nothing. So I got it on a piece of board, and I'm testing my strength. That's probably a little more than what I need for a 3 rivet, but it'll be fine. I turned it down all the way on the regulator here. So I'm putting about 10 pounds of pressure with my rivet gun. Put my bucking bar on the back. And just with these number 3 rivets, you don't have to give them very much at all. They don't need very much at all. And I'm just kind of going random places here. So I can pull, I got enough rivets in there now. I can pull my clecos. So there, I got my go, no-go gauge here. I can kind of tell by doing them that they're good, but I'm checking all these shop heads, and they look good. They look good. So now, last thing I'm going to do, just because if this was an airplane, we wouldn't want, I used to have a little, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little alcohol to put on here, and then clean that up. Do you want to just go put a little, no, just put a little bit of alcohol on there?
Yep.
It's right over by Tony. Just go get a tiny bit on there. So you can see here I have, you can see the shop heads there, and you can see from the back, and this is what it would look like. Now what you could have done if this was a real airplane, you could have put primer on the back side of this patch, but you got nice rivet patterns on there. If this was a finished airplane, did you get alcohol in there yet?
I don't know how.
Hold the camera. I only need you to put alcohol in there. Just put a little alcohol on there. You know, another episode of quarantine sheet metal. You know, we're in our pandemic here, so if I get a little alcohol on my fingers, that's probably not going to hurt anything, huh? So there, what I did is I went ahead and cleaned all that. So like I said, we could have primered the inside. Now what you would want to do is touch up the paint and paint this patch, because in theory this surface right here would have been a painted surface, and there you have a surface patch. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show here is how to do a flush patch. So that last patch we did was a surface patch, and I'm kind of cheating the system here. What I'm doing is I'm going to use that piece that we had for the surface patch, and I'm going to use it as the backer for the flush patch. So the object of this flush patch here is, if you remember when we did that surface patch, this patch was on top and there were protruding head 470 rivets. So that would be appropriate for an airplane, a slower airplane, but a faster airplane where you're more concerned about aerodynamics, we're going to do a flush patch. So what I did here is I drilled out this surface patch. I enlarged and deburred all the holes. So I drilled 30 bit for number 4 rivets, deburred everything, and then I dimpled these. Now what I'm going to do is dimple this backer. One important part is you got to remember which way to dimple them. So I made a mark on here so I know which way this patch goes. So I know that this side right here is going to have the male end of the dimpler. So stick my dimpler in there, give it a squeeze, and I'm just going to go around the circle here. Put a nice dimple in all these. There, so now we got a nice dimple in there. And we made our mark, so now I know which way it goes. I'm going to need, Harrison, I'm going to need a couple of the gold Clecos really fast. I'm going to need those. You want to begin with, you want right away. You get a couple more in your hand. So I'm going to Cleco this on here. Yeah, I'll probably put 3 Clecos in there. So now I got my backing piece dimpled and Clecoed on there. So the object, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put flush rivets in all these, and then eventually what I'm going to have to do is cut out a piece of 32. This is 32, so I'm gonna have to cut out a piece of 32 that fits perfectly in that spot, and then drill it out and put flush rivets in there. So I got this cleat on. What I'm gonna do next is measure this and cut out a piece that fits right into there. Okay, so like we left off here, I went ahead and dimpled these. I got my backing plate cleat on. I went ahead and I made my flush patch, which is going to go in there. I marked it so I know which way it goes. So now we have to determine where we're going to drill the holes for the rivets for that middle part. One thing we could do, and I'll kind of put it like here, if we draw these, we kind of want it to always look symmetrical. So if we draw those lines, like that, like that. That didn't work out so good, did it? That one doesn't look good, but we can kind of fix it. So we're not really so worried about where they're crossing in the middle there. What we are worried about is our edge distance of where we're going to put those rivets. So we're going to use number 4. So our absolute minimum edge distance would be 1/4 of an inch. Edge distance, I don't like the way that's gonna work out, because I don't like putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't like putting 8 rivets in that little piece. So we're gonna have to devise a way to put rivets in there. So I'll draw that on there, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so what I've done here, and I'll show you how I put it together. I went ahead and I fit everything. I decided to go with just 4 rivets, 4 holes in our flush patch here. So again, I marked everything, and one of the keys, you have to dimple all these holes and get everything ready before you start riveting. Once you start riveting stuff, it would make it really hard to dimple these holes. So I'm going to start by putting my backer on here. Again, I made marks to make my life easy. John, you can come over here and load clecos for me. Do it myself. Nope, I'm good. I'm good.
What?
So I got my backing plate cleat coat in there. This, I have a little mark so I know where it goes. And I know it goes in there just like that. And that cleat coat goes right there. So now I have my patch, I have my backing plates, and now all I got to do is rivet it. So I think we can find out. Here's some 4/4s. I'm going to set this in there, and that looks pretty good out the back side. That looks like exactly 1.5 diameter. So it looks like 4/4 flush rivet is going to be the right size. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and rivet these in, and then get the flush patch. I'll rivet those all in, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so like I said, I did it off camera, but you guys can get the message. So I decided to use 4 rivets in my patch there. So I got all these flush rivets. There's my backer, and then you can see that the patch part goes into the backer. So now we got a nice flush patch here. So if this was a fast airplane, jet or something, now we have a nice flush area. This would, eventually you'd touch up the paint here and make it so it matches. And that's how you would do a flush patch. So through this, you've seen how to install rivets, drill holes, install rivets, drill out rivets, do blind rivets, do flush rivets, countersink, and then do a surface patch and a flush patch. So there's a lot of stuff to do all in this one little piece, but it's a lot of good tools for learning. So remember to subscribe to my channel, like the video, ring the bell, all that jazz, and we'll see you next time.